My name is Lois Hartley. I'm 31 years old. And this is the story of how my sister's wedding shattered every illusion I had about my family, and how I turned that wreckage into poetic justice they never saw coming. It started with a seating chart. I arrived at my younger sister Angela's wedding with no expectations. That was my shield, indifference. I wore a navy blue midi dress, tasteful heels, and a small silver necklace Mom gave me when I graduated. It was one of the last gifts I received that wasn't given out of obligation. The wedding was in a fancy resort outside of Aspen, white roses, violin quartet, signature cocktails. The whole affair was the kind of spectacle Angela adored, expensive, curated, and dripping with the kind of shallow perfection you only see on Pinterest boards and bridal magazines. I hadn't been involved in any of it. Not the planning. Not the bridal shower. Not even the bachelorette weekend in Cabo that my mother gushed about, although she never called to see if I was even available. "You've always been so independent," she once told me. That was her polite way of saying, "We don't factor you into the plans." I didn't push. I never did. I was the older sister who was always expected to understand. When we were little, Angela cried, and I got blamed. Angela wanted a new doll, and I was told to share. Angela got a car at 16, I got a lecture about responsibility. Still, I came. I was the bigger person. I drove 5 hours, paid for my own hotel, and even brought a custom gift, a handcrafted shadow box with their wedding date etched into glass, filled with pressed flowers from our grandmother's garden. Sentimental, personal, and rare. Just like the connection I thought I still had with my sister. I smiled at the usher holding the guest list and asked about seating. He hesitated. "Name?" "Lois Hartley. I'm the bride's sister." His eyes scanned the list. He furrowed his brow, then offered a tight smile. "Oh, yes. This way, please." He led me past rows of glittering tables dressed with centerpieces, candlelight, and perfectly monogrammed menus, until we reached a tiny side table near the back. Not just the back, near the coat closet. One folding chair. No place setting. No name tag. No centerpiece. Just a table. Like I'd wandered in off the street and they needed to stash me somewhere quickly. At first, I laughed. A quiet, confused laugh. I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the table had been added last minute. I stood there for several seconds, scanning the room for someone who might clear things up. Instead, I heard it. A light snicker behind me. I turned to see Clarissa, Angela's college roommate, whispering to the maid of honor. They both looked at me, then looked away with that same glossy smirk you wear when someone walks in with toilet paper stuck to their shoe. I wasn't a guest. I was the family embarrassment dressed in navy. I clenched my jaw, walked past them, and found my way to the bridal suite. Angela was lounging in a silk robe, sipping champagne, surrounded by a cloud of perfume and praise. Her blonde hair was pinned up in intricate curls, and her eyes sparkled, not with kindness, but with triumph. "Oh, Lois, you made it," she said breezily, as if I were a distant cousin she barely remembered. I held up my phone with a photo of the seating chart. Am I really sitting next to the coat rack? Her eyes darted toward her maid of honor, then back to me. There were last-minute changes. The head tables filled up. "You didn't RSVP with a +1, so we figured." "So you figured the bride's only sibling should sit alone in the hallway?" I said, keeping my voice even. Angela shrugged. "You've been distant for years. I didn't think you'd care." Something inside me shifted. Not anger, not yet. Just cold, clean clarity. She hadn't forgotten. This wasn't an accident. It was a message. "You're not really part of this family anymore," she added softly, almost like a kindness. "Let's not make it awkward." Then Mom walked in. Hair perfect, pearls shining, holding a clutch like it was a trophy. Lois, don't make a scene, she said before I could speak. This is Angela's day. Try to be supportive. It wasn't a request. It was a command. My voice didn't shake. You knew where they seated me. She gave a slight nod. It's not personal. You're grown now. Be gracious. Not personal. Like I wasn't a person at all. I walked out of that room with a smile. The same smile I wore for most of my life, pleasant, composed, careful not to offend. But under it, something colder stirred. Because they forgot something very important. Angela might have gotten the wedding. But I was the one who still knew every secret she tried to bury. And her new mother-in-law, the one who just sneered at my coat rack table, was about to get a gift neither of them would forget. I returned to my table. Still alone. Still ignored. But now, I wasn't here to celebrate. I was here to end the show. I sat there at my lonely little table, no drink in my hand, no one making conversation, and let the hum of clinking glasses and muffled laughter roll over me like static. I wasn't part of this wedding. I was wallpaper. Furniture. A placeholder for a family obligation they had no intention of honoring. And then she came. Barbara, Angela's soon-to-be mother-in-law. A woman I had heard about, but never met in person. High society type. Wore pearls to brunch and gave unsolicited advice like it was gospel. She approached with an effortless sort of glide, holding a glass of champagne and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. You must be Lois, she said, her voice velvety but clipped. The elusive sister. I stood, out of habit. Yes. And you're Barbara. Her eyes skimmed my dress, then flicked toward the table like she was trying to decide whether to be amused or insulted on my behalf. Strange, she said, setting her glass down next to my name card, to see the bride's sister seated so far from the action. Are you sure you're not just an old college friend? It was deliberate. Every syllable. Not a question, a provocation. I smiled, calm and measured. Angela thought I'd be more comfortable somewhere quieter. Away from the noise. Barbara's smile sharpened. Oh, so she does think of you. The way she said it made my spine stiffen. Not out of fear, out of the slow realization that Barbara wasn't just here by coincidence. She had come for sport. She already knew who I was, and more importantly, she knew who I wasn't, someone her daughter-in-law respected. She mentioned I was distant, I replied, keeping my tone light. Which makes sense, since she stopped returning my calls 3 years ago. Barbara let out a chuckle. Well, families are complicated. I'm sure you did your best. I met her gaze squarely. So did I, until I realized I was the only one trying. The amusement in her eyes flickered, just for a second. She sipped her drink and set it down again with a little clink. In every wedding I've attended, she mused aloud, the people closest to the bride sit up front. But maybe this is the modern way of doing things, banishing family members like lepers. Very efficient. I looked around the room, at all the laughing faces, at my mother mingling like royalty, at Angela holding court among a gaggle of friends who probably couldn't even remember my name. I guess Angela's redefining tradition, I said. One burned bridge at a time. Barbara tilted her head. Tell me something, Lois. Does she always treat you like this? I gave a non-committal shrug, but my mind was already clicking into gear. Because Barbara wasn't just making small talk. She was digging. She wasn't loyal to Angela, not really. She was loyal to appearances. And nothing made people like her more dangerous than when those appearances started to crack. So I gave her what she came for. Well, I said casually, Angela used to vent about you a lot, back when we still talked. Said you were controlling? That she was dreading the wedding because you might give a speech and steal the spotlight. Her words. Barbara's jaw didn't move, but I saw it, a twitch near her temple. A brief, involuntary reaction. And just like that, the powder keg was lit. Oh, I added with a soft smile, and she once told me if you insisted on picking the wine list, she'd swap the bottles last minute and let you look like a fool in front of your friends. Again, just repeating what I heard. Barbara's mouth parted slightly. Not enough to argue. Just enough to breathe, like someone had been slapped across the soul. I could have stopped there. But something deeper urged me forward. The part of me that had stayed silent for years. The part of me that knew exactly how it felt to be pushed into corners and told to stay there. She said, I whispered, leaning in just enough for the sting to land, if Barbara says one more thing about floral arrangements, I'll tell Reed I'm eloping and let her host a party for no one. Barbara's grip on her glass tightened. The blood in her fingers drained. For the first time since she arrived, her mask slipped just enough. Then she turned on her heel and walked away without a word. The chaos didn't take long. Less than 10 minutes later, as the ceremony music softened and the lights dimmed, Barbara stepped onto the stage. I watched from the shadows, not in shame anymore, but in anticipation. Like a playwright watching the final act begin. Angela stood just off stage, clutching her bouquet and smiling like nothing in the world could touch her. Then she saw Barbara's face. The smile dropped. What's going on? I heard her hiss. She's not supposed to. But it was too late. Barbara took the mic. Her voice was calm. Calculated. Deadly. Before we begin, she said, I'd like to say a few words. Not as the mother of the groom, but as someone who values honesty, integrity, and respect in a family. Angela's knuckles whitened on her bouquet. I stepped forward, just a few feet. I wasn't hiding anymore. Barbara's speech wasn't loud. But it was sharp. She began to unravel everything. The way she was treated. The things she had been told. The woman her son was about to marry, someone who, according to a reliable source, didn't respect her, didn't appreciate her, and certainly didn't belong in her family. Angela tried to interrupt. But Barbara waved her off like a gnat. I was warned, she said coldly. Warned by someone who's been pushed aside one too many times. And you know what? I believe her. Gasps echoed through the room. Angela's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I stood there, silent, steady, and watched as the scaffolding collapsed. Everything Angela had worked so hard to build, the fake smiles, the curated image, the carefully orchestrated wedding, all of it began to unravel in front of 200 guests. And I hadn't even reached the punchline yet. Angela was frozen. Not the kind of dramatic, fainting couch shock she used to fake when Mom denied her a second serving of dessert. This was the real kind, the kind where your body doesn't know whether to run or scream, so it just stands there, trembling, hoping no one notices the sweat forming under the layers of foundation and fake warmth. But everyone noticed. I walked slowly toward the center of the reception hall, not because I wanted attention, but because the moment demanded it. Because every time I was told to stay quiet, to not make it about me, they had been building toward this. Angela spun around when she saw me approach, her whisper sharp and venomous. What the hell are you doing? I didn't answer her. I didn't need to. The room had fallen into a tense, uneasy hush. Reed, her groom, looked like he'd just stepped into a theater halfway through a thriller and couldn't tell whether he was rooting for the protagonist or the villain. I reached for a glass of orange juice from the nearby table, not champagne, not wine. Something simple, grounded. Honest. I raised it slightly and cleared my throat. Excuse me, everyone, I said, my voice even and unshaken. I know this isn't part of the schedule, but I'd like to say something too. Angela hissed, Lois, don't. I kept going. I just wanted to say, thank you. To everyone who made it so abundantly clear where I stand in this family. Thank you for the table by the coat rack. For the missing name card. For making me invisible at my own sister's wedding. A few heads turned awkwardly. Some guests looked away. But a few, especially those from Reed's side, looked right at me. And they listened. I wasn't going to say anything. I was just going to sit quietly, smile, and leave without making waves. But then Barbara came and reminded me something I forgot. I turned toward the groom's mother, who stood like a sentinel near the champagne table, arms crossed, unreadable. She reminded me that being excluded doesn't mean you lose your voice. It just means you have nothing left to lose by using it. Angela's mascara eyes were wide and furious. You're ruining my wedding. I turned to her calmly. No, Angela. You ruined it. You ruined it when you sat your only sister next to the trash cans. When you told your future mother-in-law I was just some distant acquaintance. When you laughed in my face and told me I wasn't family anymore. Gasps. She opened her mouth to deny it, but I kept going. And since I'm apparently not part of this family, I guess it's no big deal if I share a few family stories, right? Barbara, who had looked like she might speak again, went still, watching now with more interest than anger. I stepped forward. Angela, remember that call we had last fall? The one where you told me you were only marrying Reed because he came from money and you were tired of working at that boutique? The color drained from Angela's face. That's not true. Oh, it was venting, right? Like when you said his laugh annoyed you and that you were hoping he'd grow out of it? Or when you joked that if Barbara tried to plan a family vacation, you'd fake a miscarriage just to avoid going? Reed's jaw clenched. You could almost hear the string snap. No one took that seriously. Angela shrieked, the desperation now tangible. It was just jokes. Private jokes. You said them to me. The same sister you treated like a stranger. I turned to the guests, who now looked less like an audience and more like jurors being shown key evidence. You all came to celebrate love. Family. Unity. I came here for the same reason. I brought a handmade gift. I even dressed respectfully, like my mother reminded me. I scanned the room, found my mother near the side wall. Her arms were folded tightly across her chest, lips thin, as if she still believed she could will this whole moment away. Angela didn't just push me aside. She erased me. And no one said a word. I could feel my voice trembling now, not from fear, but from years of buried grief rising to the surface. This was the final insult in a lifetime of being second place in my own home. And the funny thing is? I would have swallowed it. I would have smiled and left quietly, if not for Barbara. She didn't just mock me. She gave me clarity. She showed me that the only person keeping me in the shadows was me. And now came the final twist of the knife. I turned to Reed. Reed, you've been nothing but kind to me. But I think you deserve to know, Angela used to joke that she'd wait until after the wedding to reshape your friend circle, because, in her words, I'm not marrying into your frat house. She said she was going to make you sell the dog. Now, a murmur from the left side of the room. Someone gasped. A woman visibly clutched her partner's arm. Reed finally spoke. Angela, is any of this true? She turned to him like a cornered animal. It was venting, Reed. Everyone vents. I didn't mean it. His voice was quiet, but devastating. But you said it. Angela looked around wildly. Her gaze landed on Mom and Dad, but they were just as paralyzed as everyone else. And then her fury turned back to me. You planned this, she hissed, stepping forward. You jealous, bitter, lonely witch. You waited for this day just to destroy me. I smiled, calm and clear. I didn't plan anything. You did. You made every choice. I just gave you the courtesy of letting the truth come out in your own spotlight. She lunged for the microphone, but Reed stepped between us. His face was unreadable. His voice, flat. Angela. I need to think. Her face crumpled. Reed, no. This is our wedding. But the spell was broken. The room was no longer under her control. Guests were whispering, phones were out. Some were already slipping toward the exits. Reed stepped off the stage, motioned to one of his groomsmen, and disappeared toward the back. Angela stood frozen, bouquet trembling in her hand. And I walked, quietly and calmly, to the gift table. Because there was still one final act to complete. I didn't rush. I didn't make a scene. I just walked calmly toward the gift table, the one wrapped in white linen and stacked with boxes glittering in gold, silver, and rose-tinted foil. It was meant to be a place of celebration. But right now, it felt like a tomb. Angela's wedding was still technically happening, but it had already died. I reached for the small wooden box I had placed there that morning. Hand-carved, polished walnut, with a glass top etched with their names, Angela and Reed, and the date. Inside were dried violets from our grandmother's garden, pressed neatly beside a handwritten letter about love, resilience, and commitment. I had poured weeks into it. It was a symbol of forgiveness, of family, of still trying despite being left out my entire life. Now it was just evidence that I had once believed they deserved my kindness. I lifted it gently, both hands under the box, and turned to face the room. Angela's voice cracked like glass behind me. You can't be serious. I didn't say a word. I just looked at her. She stepped forward, heels clicking frantically against the polished floor, mascara streaking beneath her eyes now. You are so immature. You're still trying to make this about you? A few people turned their heads. But no one stopped me. I tightened my grip on the gift and replied calmly, you said I wasn't family. So there's no reason to keep a gift from a stranger. Angela's lips curled. It's a wedding gift. You can't just take it back. Oh, but I can. I didn't sign a contract. This isn't a tax write-off. It was a gesture of love and inclusion. And now, since I have neither, I'm reclaiming it. A few guests stifled awkward chuckles. I saw one bridesmaid shift uncomfortably, staring at her lap as if it might swallow her. Lois, my mother called out sharply, stepping forward. Just leave the gift and go. Please. Don't make things worse. I turned to her slowly. I'm not making anything worse. I'm just following the rules. The ones you all showed me today. I'm not invited. I'm not welcomed. I'm not needed. And now, not generous. Her face paled. I'd never spoken to her like that before. Lois, we didn't mean. You did, I cut in, softly. You always did. I turned back toward the ballroom doors, the box cradled against my chest like a memory I'd outgrown. Each step echoed louder than the last, even as Angela cried behind me, her voice rising into hysterics. You'll regret this. You'll push everyone away. You're just bitter. I paused, hand on the door. And without turning, I said, I didn't push anyone away. You all walked away from me years ago. Today, I finally stopped following behind. Then I walked out. The doors swung shut behind me. Outside, the air was cool and crisp. The sky was clear, but not overly bright. It was the kind of day that should have belonged to a happy couple. Instead, it now belonged to a woman who finally took herself seriously. I stood for a moment, just breathing. The silence out here wasn't cold, it was clean. It didn't scream or sting. It just waited, like the blank page after the end of a chapter. I didn't cry. Not even when I reached my car and set the box carefully on the passenger seat. Because this wasn't loss. This was freedom. And I knew, without a doubt, this story wasn't done. The next morning, I woke up to the buzzing of my phone on the nightstand. I ignored it at first. But when I finally checked, I saw the damage. 17 missed calls. 9 voicemails. Dozens of texts. From Mom. From Angela. Even from our Aunt Sylvia in Texas, who I hadn't heard from since our cousin's graduation 10 years ago. They all said variations of the same thing. How could you? You ruined everything. Call us back now. You've gone too far. You're jealous. You'll apologize. And you'll fix this. I read each one slowly as I sipped my coffee, the morning sun casting long lines across the floor. Then I got to the final message. Dad. Short. Simple. Call me when you can. I think you should know a few things. I hesitated. Then I called. He picked up on the second ring. Hey, kid, he said, his voice rough and tired. I'm listening, I said. My tone wasn't hostile, just done. He exhaled. I didn't plan on saying anything. I didn't even know if I should. But after yesterday. There was a long silence. I've been quiet too long, he continued. I always let your mom and Angela make the decisions. I thought staying silent would keep the peace. I didn't respond. I wanted him to keep going. But after what happened, I can't pretend anymore. I saw you. I saw everything. And I should have stepped in years ago. I swallowed. My throat suddenly felt tight. What happened after I left? He paused. Reed didn't go back to the hotel with Angela. He drove to Barbara's house. They argued all night. Barbara called your mom at 7 a.m. told her she doesn't want Angela in her family anymore. Said she's dishonest. Said she's not welcome. I closed my eyes. Not from joy. From weariness. Angela wants you to call Barbara, he added. Wants you to tell her it was all a misunderstanding. To undo it. I didn't even laugh. I just said, I won't apologize for telling the truth. I know, Dad said quietly. And honestly? You shouldn't. There was another pause, filled with the quiet hum of my coffee maker behind me. I think, for the first time, he said, voice barely above a whisper, I understand why you pulled away from all of us. I get it now. I looked out the window at the swaying leaves, the bright sky beyond the glass. And for the first time in years, I felt understood. Not forgiven. Not redeemed. Just seen. After I hung up the phone with Dad, I sat still for a long time. The sun rose higher, sliding across the living room rug in soft gold bands. My coffee had gone lukewarm. But I didn't move. I just let the stillness hold me, like a blanket I'd never been allowed to wrap around myself before. It wasn't peace, not yet. But it was something close. Something better than apology, better than silence. It was the weight of years lifting, quietly. And then came the knock. 3 sharp taps on the door. I opened it, expecting maybe a neighbor, maybe a delivery. It was Angela. She was still in makeup, smeared now, as if she hadn't slept. Her blonde hair was pulled into a messy bun, and she wore a creased white hoodie that did nothing to disguise the storm behind her eyes. You've ruined everything, she said, without so much as a greeting. I didn't invite her in. She crossed her arms. Reed's not talking to me. Barbara has blocked my number. And now Mom thinks I should fly to Arizona to cool down. I said nothing. I hope you're happy, Lois, she snapped. You got what you wanted. You got your big scene. You made me look like a monster in front of everyone I care about. I leaned against the doorway. I didn't make you look like anything. You showed them who you are. I just stopped hiding it for you. Angela's voice cracked. You used to be better than this. You used to just let things go. I smiled slightly. Yeah. And look where that got me. A seat next to the coat rack. That stung. I saw it land in her posture. I said some things, she admitted. Fine. But you didn't have to torch the whole day. You didn't have to go nuclear. You think that was nuclear? I asked, my voice calm. Angela, you told people I was barely even family. You laughed in my face when I asked for respect. I said 3 minutes of truth in a room full of lies, and you call that nuclear? I panicked, she said. Okay? Barbara scares me. I didn't mean half of what I said about her. I just didn't think you'd ever repeat it. That's the problem, I replied. You built a wedding and a life on the assumption that no one would ever call you out. And when someone did, you collapsed. She didn't have a response for that. Instead, she looked past me into my living room, her eyes landing on the shadow box still resting on the table. You took back your gift, she whispered. Of everything, that hurt the most. That was rich. I raised an eyebrow. Not the public embarrassment? Not Reed walking out? What hurt the most was not getting to keep something I made with love. Because it meant you gave up, she whispered. You always held on, even when I was horrible. Even when Mom ignored you. You were the one person who never gave up on us. I stared at her. And in that moment, I saw the sister I once loved. Not the golden child, not the manipulator. Just a girl who had always known I'd be there no matter what, and now, suddenly, wasn't. I stepped aside and nodded toward the couch. She walked in, shoulders slumped. We sat in silence for a while. She stared at the floor. I stared at her. You always had the spotlight, I said quietly. But I had the memory. I remember when we were kids, how you'd cry just to get out of chores. How Mom would scold me if I didn't hand over my dessert. I remember every time I got overlooked, dismissed, or used as the example so you could shine brighter. She blinked rapidly, but I kept going. But I also remember the night you sat with me when I didn't get into the university I wanted. You brought me cookies and said, "They're stupid for not seeing how brilliant you are." I remember you once cutting your hair to match mine because you said I looked cool. Her eyes widened slightly. I've tried so hard to forgive everything, I said, my voice now shaking. I told myself over and over again that you didn't mean it. That you were just spoiled. Or pressured. Or scared. Angela wiped at her face. I didn't know how to be anything else. That's not true, I said. You knew. You just never had to try. Because we all let you get away with it. Mom. Dad. Me. Especially me. She looked down. I'm not angry anymore, I said. I'm just done. Angela looked up at me, eyes rimmed with red. Done with me? I shook my head. Done with being the family punching bag. She swallowed hard. What do you want me to do? She asked. Tell me. I'll apologize to Barbara. I'll talk to Reed. I'll. Stop, I said. She froze. I don't want apologies you don't mean, I said softly. And I don't want you crawling back to people just to save face. I want you to finally understand what it feels like to be ignored, underestimated, erased. Tears filled her eyes, and for the first time in years, they weren't manipulative. I do, she whispered. Now I do. I nodded. Then maybe, I said, you're ready to grow up. She stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. You're the strongest person I know, she said. And the most honest. I said nothing. When she left, I looked back at the shadow box. Still intact. Still beautiful. Still mine. Maybe one day, I'll give it to someone who deserves it. But today? It stayed with me. Where it belongs. The house felt quieter after Angela left, but not in a lonely way. It was the quiet you get after a storm, when all the shouting has died down and you're left with broken branches and sunlight filtering through the cracks. Something had shifted. Maybe for good. And this time, I wasn't rushing to tape it all back together. I didn't expect her to change overnight. I didn't expect miracles. But what I did expect, what I finally demanded, was space. Not just distance. Space to exist without apologizing. To breathe without walking on eggshells. To be more than the sister of the bride, the background character, the family's emotional janitor. That weekend, I stayed off social media. I didn't respond to messages. I didn't check for updates about whether Reed had called off the honeymoon or if Barbara had completely disowned Angela. I let the silence stretch. And it was the best decision I'd ever made. On Monday, I returned to work, the nonprofit where I'd spent the last 7 years building community programs for at-risk youth. No one asked about the wedding. No one mentioned family drama. It was refreshing. And then, mid-afternoon, an email came through. From Barbara. The subject line. About that day. My heart thudded once in my chest, then calmed. I clicked it open. Lois. I've replayed that day more times than I'd like to admit. I owe you an apology, not just for how I spoke to you, but for taking pleasure in your isolation. I thought I was being clever, perhaps even protective of Reed. Instead, I was cruel. But cruelty has a strange way of circling back, doesn't it? Thank you for telling me the truth, however messy it was. If nothing else, you gave me the clarity to see beyond the sparkle and into something real. With respect. Barbara Galloway. I sat back and let the weight of it settle. The woman who once mocked me at the edge of the dance floor now wrote to me like an equal. No excuses. No backpedaling. Just a rare, honest acknowledgement. It didn't undo the past. But it gave me something I never thought I'd get from that family, respect. Later that week, Dad called again. You okay? He asked, his voice gentler than I remembered it ever being. I think so, I replied. Are you? He paused. I've been thinking a lot. About you. About how I let your mother take the reins while I just sat in the passenger seat. I thought letting her run the show would keep everything together. But I see now, it just pushed you out. I didn't interrupt. I let him sit with his guilt. I'm not asking you to forgive us, he said. But I want to earn a chance to do better. If you'll let me. I closed my eyes, breathing in that moment. You can start, I said slowly, by remembering my birthday next month. He laughed softly. I already put it in my calendar. I swear. We didn't fix decades of damage in that one call. But it felt like a truce. A ceasefire. Maybe even the start of something real. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address, but the looping cursive was unmistakable. Angela. I opened it slowly. Lois. I thought about texting. Or calling. But you deserve more than that. You deserve something that doesn't vanish with a swipe. I don't know how to fix what I've broken. I'm not even sure I can. But I see it now, all of it. You weren't dramatic. You weren't jealous. You were right. I've always been the star. But you've always been the one with gravity. You held us together, and we never thanked you for it. Reed and I are taking time. I don't know what that means yet. But I do know I need to change. Not for him. For me. If I do, maybe we can meet again, not as sisters forced into roles, but as women trying to grow. I miss you already. Angela. I folded the letter slowly and set it beside the shadow box on my shelf. It didn't make me cry. It didn't undo the pain. But it gave me hope. The kind of quiet, cautious hope that doesn't rush to forgive, but waits to see if change actually comes. In the meantime, I kept living. I went to brunch with friends. I bought myself new books. I took a solo trip to Telluride and hiked a trail I'd been too scared to try for years. I laughed louder. I stopped explaining myself. And for the first time in a long time, I looked in the mirror and didn't see someone holding back. I saw Lois. The woman who finally chose herself. It's been 3 months since the wedding that wasn't. 3 months since I carried my gift out of that hall like it was the last piece of myself I still owned. 3 months since I walked away, not just from a party, but from a role I never volunteered for, the family scapegoat, the emotional fixer, the silent supporter in everyone else's spotlight. And in those 3 months, something remarkable happened. I didn't fall apart. I didn't spiral or second guess. I didn't apologize just to smooth the waters. I didn't cave in to the guilt texts from my mother, or the silence from extended family who just didn't know what was going on and chose to stay out of it. Instead, I built something new. I started volunteering at a local women's center on weekends, using the same skills I once poured into family apologies and emotional labor. I found joy in watching women rise, regain their voice, even when the world had shoved them down. I took the money I would have spent on another forgettable birthday party for someone else and booked a retreat in Arizona, hiking, journaling, stargazing with strangers who didn't expect anything from me but presence. And I said no more often. No to dinners that required emotional gymnastics. No to being the first to reach out when others refused to meet me halfway. No to the weight I used to carry, convinced it made me good. I said yes, too. Yes to dinners with friends who laughed with me instead of at me. Yes to spontaneous weekends away. Yes to choosing peace over performance. And then, 2 weeks ago, I got a call from Reed. I was surprised to see his name. I almost didn't answer. But something told me to pick up. Lois, he said, after a long silence. I just wanted to say thank you. For what? For saving me from marrying someone I didn't really know. I think. I knew something was off. But I didn't want to admit it. You forced the truth out in a way I couldn't ignore. I let that sit for a moment. I'm sorry, he added. For the way you were treated. For being part of it, even if I didn't realize. It wasn't your fault, I replied. But thank you for saying that. He paused. Barbara's actually the one who told me to call you. She said, she respects you. I nearly laughed. Barbara? She said you have a spine of steel and a heart like a compass. Thought you'd want to know. And, strangely, I did. Before we hung up, Reed asked if I wanted to get coffee sometime, not romantically, just to talk. I said maybe. Not because I wanted anything from him, but because I didn't fear him, or Angela, or the weight of their judgment anymore. I was free. As for Angela, she's still working on herself, or so the occasional texts claim. No grand transformation yet. No miraculous turn into sainthood. Just small steps. That's all I ever wanted. Not perfection. Just accountability. My mother and I haven't spoken since the wedding. Not once. It hurts. But it also feels clean. Like the wound has closed, even if the scar remains. Some days, I still look at the shadow box, the gift I made, reclaimed, and kept for myself. And it reminds me of something I once gave so freely to everyone else but never offered myself, grace. I've thought a lot about what it means to walk away. To burn a bridge not out of vengeance, but necessity. We're taught to endure. To keep peace at any cost. But what if the cost is ourselves? That wedding was never going to be mine. But the moment I walked out of it, head high, truth in hand, self-respect intact, that was my ceremony. That was my rebirth. If you've listened this far, thank you. Really. I'm not the kind of person who used to share stories like this. I used to think my voice didn't matter, that I was just background noise in louder, brighter lives. But the truth is, silence doesn't protect you. It just preserves the lies of the people who hope you'll stay quiet. So if you're sitting in the corner of your own family's story, wondering when someone will finally see you. Maybe it's time to stop waiting. Maybe it's time to stand. And if no one claps? Walk anyway. Because freedom is rarely given. But it's always waiting for you to take it. Welcome to Revenge Echoes, where stories speak louder than revenge. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't rage or ruin, it's reclaiming your place, your dignity, and your voice. Lois didn't destroy the wedding. She simply told the truth, and that truth tore down the fragile tower of deception her family had built. Courage isn't loud. It's quiet. It's steady. It's walking away with your head high when no one ever expected you to. What did you think of Lois's story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you've ever been the family scapegoat or the one pushed aside, know that your voice matters. You are not alone. Like, comment, and subscribe to Revenge Echoes for more powerful real-life stories of betrayal, justice, and the courage to walk away.